What's up guys? In this video we're going to take a look at my DH BETHEL AMPS HX Stomp patch. I designed this patch to replace amps at the end of a pedal board. So for this example, I am using my full pedal board as you've seen it in my rundown video, stereo out into the HX Stomp. And it's based on the amps I use most of the time with BETHEL music, and that is my 90s Corgera AC30 with the 6402 cone greenbacks, made in the UK, and my Fender PROSONIC. I also built this patch around impulse responses that I've captured from each of those amps using a Shure 545, which is what we use most of the time with BETHEL. So it includes one IR for each amp of the greenback and of the G10 vintage speaker that is in the PROSONIC. You can check out my complete impulse response libraries on my website for a lot more mic options and speaker options. So this is version 2 of this patch. Line 6 just released their 3.0 firmware a couple months ago, and that includes support for 8 blocks in the Stomp. So you used to only be able to run 6, now you can run 8. So I just updated this patch to include 8 blocks with a few more options. Another thing I've done in version 2 of this patch is pre-programmed in aux switch functions. So if you have one of these, you can essentially add 2 more foot switch options to your Stomp that you can program to do anything you want. So I highly recommend getting an aux switch if you don't have one. This one is made by 751 and it works awesome. So let's do a quick overview of the patch and how I have the foot switches set up, and then we will do some sound examples. As you see it now is what I would consider to be its default state. So on foot switch 1, I've assigned that foot switch to adjust the gains on both of the amps so you can tailor the clean headroom to your pedal board and how much breakup you want for your clean tone. So when this is engaged, the amp gains are set a little lower, so this is perfect for like a really clean, pristine tone. And then when you take it off, the amp gains rise a little bit, so that gives you a little more breakup when you're clean and a little bit more compression. So you'll notice as you add overdrive and volume into the Stomp, you'll hear the amps compress and distort differently depending on what setting you have. So I would consider this to be the default setting, like I said, but if you raise the amp gains, you'll get more compression and a little more drive from the amps. Foot switch 2 is set to engage a high cut. So this gives you some options when you're adding drive or playing different guitars. So you have the option to cut some high end and smooth it out if you want. It's currently set to cut down to about 14K. It's also cutting a little bit of 5 to 6K in there, but those are all tweakable settings. So you can go into HX Edit and you can mess around with the high cut and see how much high end you want to cut out with your drives and your pedal board, what have you. So we'll demo that in a little bit. The third foot switch is assigned as a gain boost. And by default, the gain boost block is set before all the amps. So when you engage it, it's a 3 dB boost that pushes the amps harder. So you'll notice they'll start to compress a little bit and distort as well. And it sounds different than raising the amp gain. So I find that a lot of times I like it in this setting. And then if you want to have a little gain boost or even a volume boost that compresses the amps, it's nice on your clean tone as well as dirty tone. You can just hit that in. And the flexibility I like about this setting is since the boost is its own block, you can go in HX Edit and just grab the block and drag it after the amps and IRs, and then it gives you just a straight clean 3 dB boost. So you're not hitting the amps harder, it's not adding compression, it's not distorting the amps anymore. So you have an option there to see what you like with this boost. After the amps and IRs, I have an EQ block which is assigned to the high cut, and then a compressor that kind of glues everything together a little bit. And then at the end, I have an optical tremolo, kind of designed to be like a tremolo on an amp, like a black face or brown face Fender amp. and that is what is assigned to foot switch 4 and 5. So 4 engages the trim, and 5 adjusts some parameters on the trim to give you different speed, intensity, and spread on the trim. So as you see, there's a lot of subtle tweaks and options kind of built into the patch, so that way you can really tailor it to how you have your pedal board set up. And I recommend spending some time on this default setting, kind of getting your gain staging to sound good and even through the stomp. I found you might have to tweak some parameters when playing through your real amp versus through the stomp, because they like to be pushed in different ways, but a lot of these subtle tweaks was me trying to build in a real amp likeness and compression and breakup into the stomp, at least options for it. So if you add on a certain drive and it may sound a little different than you're expecting, you can try to add the high cut or change the amp gains or add a boost instead. So you have some different flexibility to really tailor your tone to get it to sound as realistic as possible. All right, now let's do some sound demos. I'm just gonna quickly go through some of my gain stages, and you can hear how it sounds. This is just my compressor, and I'm running a little bit of reverb and delay. These are my Goodness of God presets. You can find all my Strymon presets for Bethel Music songs on my website. So here's my clean tone. And here's first stage drive. And here is the boost for leads. Let's play a little Raise a Hallelujah riff and see what it sounds like. So let's go through some of the options, and I'll show you how it kind of changes the sound and gives you a little bit of flexibility. So we're back on our clean tone here. So I'm going to take off the amp drive, which raises the drive of the amps. So you can hear a little bit more breakup and compression when I take that off, and that raises the drive of the amps. Let's hear how it contrasts once you start adding more gain. So a few different options for how much headroom and breakup you want the amps to have. Moving on to the high cut, I'll show you what it sounds like with it off and then how it sounds with it on. So you can hear it kind of smooths out some of the top end depending on what you're playing and what you're used to and the kind of tone you like. You can kind of tweak that to your liking. The only thing I'll say about the high cut is be careful about tweaking it too low, because then in the context of a mix, your guitar might sound a little bit muddy and get lost. But that is a feature that you can experiment with. So moving on to the 3 dB boost, currently it is set in its default position before the amps and pushing the amps harder. So I'll play some clean and then with some drive so you can hear how it adds to your signal. So there in the clean tone, you can hear how it is pushing the amps a little bit harder, causing them to break up and adding a little bit more compression. You can use it as an overdrive if you want, potentially. I'll show you how it works in a lead/gain boost. I'm gonna add on my kind of lead overdrive sound, and then we'll kick on the boost and you can hear how it compresses a little bit more and adds a little bit more gain. So that's essentially another boost pedal and drive pedal you can add to your board. It's a fun feature. Let me move the block after the amps and IRs. So now it'll be more of a true clean volume boost. You'll mainly hear just an increase in level, not gain or compression. So I'll play that same thing. So you have some different options there with the boost. Moving on to the trim block, one of the reasons I wanted to add this, as I mentioned earlier, for it to be more like an amp-like trim. I have a lot of trim low settings I use in my Mobius, but my Mobius is set pre my timeline and Big Sky. So when my trim is on, it's then sending to my reverb and delay, and those wash the trim out a little bit, which is a sound in and of itself, but this is more of like an amplifier trim. It's at the very end of your signal, so it's the most dramatic. So let's hear what it sounds like. I have my clean tone pulled up again. And then when you engage foot switch 5, it adjusts a few different parameters for a faster and wider trim. Well, that's pretty much it for this patch. If you like what you heard, you can find it on my website to download, along with a lot of other impulse response packs and other patches and Kemper profiles. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't yet, and I'll see you next time.